I want to go to Andy Cart, President George W. Bush's chief of staff on these developments. You know, I mentioned that, Andy, and always good to have you, that's the balance for governors. That's the balance for each and every one of them, because there are different trends in different states. In Georgia, the criticism of a Republican governor by a Republican president is that he's moving too soon. In New York, cautious optimism that maybe this might prompt an easing of restrictions sooner than thought. What do you make of it all?
Well, first of all, the states are the laboratories of democracy, and we see laboratories of scientists trying to find the cure. We find laboratories of testing companies trying to discover who has it and who doesn't, how best to test people. And the states are the laboratories of democracy finding out what might work. So I'm in favor of all of these different experiences that governors are trying to deal with and see how they deal with it so we can learn from them. I think that prudence is always better than irrational behavior. I think the governor of Georgia acted too fast to open barber shops and hairstylists and tattoo parlors. I wouldn't have done that, and I hope that he'll take the president's advice and counsel on this. The president has been very forward-leaning, but he's saying on this one, lean back a little bit and let's judge what's going to happen slowly so that we don't create a bigger problem by having a return of the pandemic at places that maybe didn't realize they were in the middle of it.
You know, I think part of the problem with the Governor Kemp was that he didn't talk to local mayors. He didn't talk to other people. He might have. I'm not there. But they were caught off guard. Certainly, I know he had telegraphed to the president what he was planning to do, and the president was saying he didn't think it was a good idea. Dr. Anthony Fauci indicated the same. But I would assume he knows his state. I know how things are. I doubt he's going to dial this back. So is there a danger here when a governor sort of goes off the reservation and makes a move too soon? To your point, the Constitution gives that governor the power to do so. But are there any mechanisms in place to reverse it if it's deemed to be a public threat?
Well, I'm hoping that the mayors and the county officials and the small government officials will put their thumb on the scale and say, hey, slow down a little bit. And maybe they can exercise a little bit of control over what's happening. Again, governors don't have any impact on interstate transportation and interstate business, but governors do have a big role on what happens in their state. And they should pay attention to the mayors and the local elected officials in the counties and the smaller towns and say, what is it you think we should be doing in your jurisdiction? How do we make this fit? And maybe the governor could give unique counsel to different counties, the way he wants to do things differently than New York does. Maybe he should recognize that Atlanta wants to do things a little different than some other small town in Georgia.
You know, you can attest to the suddenness of something that turns everything 180 degrees south. I mean, for President Bush, it was that financial meltdown in the final months of his administration that seemed to come out of nowhere. There was a lot of second guessing what people should have known or not known. I get that. But this virus is getting the same type of treatment and impact. Now, that financial meltdown took years to recover from. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on this one and how the leadership styles in addressing it might compare, contrast. What do you think?
Well, I think in the context of the climate of politics, and let's not forget, we're in the midst of an election year, so politics is going to play a role in everybody's dialogue. I don't think it should play the role that it does, but the reality is that people do play politics at this time. I actually think it's premature to second guess the decisions that are made by leaders that are trying to do the right thing. So give leaders the benefit of the doubt. Yes, if you're a governor, blow the whistle and say, I need help. But don't say you need help to create a political advantage. It should be you need help to create a better place for your constituents and where they need to go. So that's one thing I would caution against is don't be hyper-political in a time of stress when people are looking for comfort and direction and confidence in their leaders. The second thing is I would say acknowledge that the Federal Emergency Management Agency is there to help. Now, the states will have to ask for reimbursement for what they spent. Be careful about what you ask for. Make sure that you anticipate you'll have to reimburse it. Pay attention to your obligations to meet debt requirements. And I want the federal government to have more sympathy for some of the challenges that states will have in trying to pay this debt. I think they should take a look at the, state and local tax deductions again. States may need some relief for that, and we want to give people more incentive to pay their taxes by making sure they can deduct it on their federal income taxes. And there are ways for the small business community. I liked Mark Cuban's suggestion that maybe the bank should give a line of credit to very small businesses so that they can overwrite a check if it's going for payroll, and they get a little benefit of the doubt on kind of having a cushion at their local bank as they're meeting payroll concerns. This is in the very small businesses that are trying to maintain a position where they can get back into the business of making money and making products for people and giving services to people in a district.
Those aren't bad ideas. Andy Card, thank you very, very much. Good catching up with you. Continued good health, my friend.